Hey you guys, it's Brittany and welcome back to my channel. Today we are hopping into a new installment of Makeup and Murder, and I'm gonna do it a little bit differently this time. I am still trying to figure out which way you guys like best. So if you've watched my Wine and True Crime or Unwind with True Crime and you like that one better, let me know in the comments down below. But I'm gonna mix it up and do a little bit of both in this video while we talk about the infamous Drew Peterson. So if you want to hear the story of Drew Peterson and all of his shenanigans, then stay tuned. Okay, you guys, so as you know, I've been kind of playing around with the format of my true crime segment of my channel. I sometimes do makeup and murder, where I am doing my makeup kind of a get ready with me style while we talk about a true crime case. And I've recently started to try to do Unwind with True Crime, which is where I'm just kind of sitting and hanging out with y'all and telling y'all a story about true crime while I drink my wine of choice for the story. So with that being said, today I am going to mix it up a little bit more, and I'm going to do a makeup look while talking about this case, but I'll try to keep the makeup look simple, and then I'll also be enjoying some wine while I am doing this look. So today's wine of choice is the Gewürztraminer. I am a member of Cooper's Hawk Winery, and I love their Gewürztraminer wine. And for those of you who have never heard of that wine, I will spell it out for you below. But love the wine. It's not too dry, not too sweet, kind of in the middle for me. So I wanted to enjoy this particular wine because, as y'all saw in the thumbnail, Drew Peterson looks a little bit German mustache. So it was fitting. But let's hop into the story of Drew Peterson, y'all. So talking about Drew Peterson, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on him. Drew Peterson was a sergeant at the Bolingbrook Police Department, and this hits really close to home because I used to live in the very same area. I used to live in a town or township called Woodridge, which is across the street from Bolingbrook. So a lot of friends lived in Bolingbrook. Everything I did was mostly in Bolingbrook, and I'm very familiar with the area, obviously. So he was a sergeant for this particular police department, and he didn't have a great reputation as a police officer. So he was married for the first time to a woman named Carol back in 1974, and this was while he was in the Army, and they had 2 children, and he ended up cheating, and she divorced him. So after that, he decided to marry another woman named Vicky Connell, and he didn't have any children with her, but she already had a daughter from a previous marriage, so he had a stepdaughter technically from this marriage. But going into old habits, he cheated on her, and he actually cheated on her with his third wife, Kathleen Savio, and this is important because it continues to repeat itself, and Kathleen is a very important person in this story. So after he marries Kathleen, he does the same old spiel where he's cheating and all of that good stuff. So he ends up cheating on his third wife, Kathleen, with a 16-year-old girl by the name of Stacy Peterson at the time. Early on, he just established a pattern of being just trash from the very beginning. Now, he was also trash at being a police officer at the same time. I'm just going to throw on my Fenty matte primer. He moved around so much within the police force that he just, he bounced around jobs, never got a good reputation, never got good at anything. And people just did not like really working with him. So he even was a member of the narcotics team and ended up getting dismissed from that job because he told a biker gang some information that could have blown the cover and ruined the operation for some undercover agents that were actually doing an undercover drug deal. So not a very good police officer, if you ask me. Now, as I said, he was married 3 times. He also cheated on his third wife with Stacy, who he eventually married. So let's take a moment and just talk about Stacy and how she got into this vulnerable situation in the first place. So Stacy grew up in Bolingbrook for most of her childhood, and it's so funny the way that these people say Bolingbrook was a sleepy town, nothing much happens there. Who y'all lying to? I was in Bolingbrook. I knew all the stuff that happened in Bolingbrook. Nothing good happened in Bolingbrook, okay? It was not a sleepy town, let me tell you that. But anywho, they grew up in Bolingbrook. Stacy and her family did not have very much money at all. As a child, Stacy's house caught on fire and actually burned down, and she lost one of her sisters in the fire. She also lost an infant sister when she was also small to SIDS. So if that tragedy was not enough, along with the losing of her sister in the fire, she also had a brother who ended up going to prison for a sex offense. And to make matters that much more worse, their mother got up one day, said, "I'm going to church," grabbed her Bible, she walked out. Sis never came home from church. So, not the best childhood to grow up in. But luckily, she did have one sister who stuck with her through it all, who was her ride or die, and that was her sister Cassandra. So, her and Cassandra lived with their father for most of their lives, and all they had was each other. They moved around so much. They didn't have a lot of money. There wasn't a lot of stability. So, they just held on to each other. Now, when Stacy was 16, she was working in a motel. The motel that she was working in, Drew and his partner just so happened to be in the area. And this is how Drew and Stacy met. And again, he was still married to Kathleen. So while they were dating for 2 years, he and Stacy would like sneak behind Kathleen's back, but not really, to see each other and have sex. So he would wait until his wife and his 2 sons were in the house but sleeping, and he would have Stacy sneak into a window in their basement, and he had this room set up in his basement. Now, I don't know how his wife just wasn't like, questioning, what is this room for? It was like a bedroom, but it was all black, no light coming in there. Like, what were you using that room for? I feel like these husbands just get away with so much in these stories, but anyway. So Stacy would basically sneak into his house while his wife and children were upstairs sleeping, and she would have sex with him and spend the night afterwards. Like it was cool. Like his wife couldn't walk downstairs at any minute and see her laying in the bed kicking it. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm just going to tell y'all now, I'm not the wife to not know what the hell my husband is doing. It's just not an option. That's not happening. So, of course, the whole town knows that he is just gallivanting around with this 16-year-old girl behind Kathleen's back, but not really, because he's not trying to hide it. So some generous, kind-hearted citizen of Bolingbrook, they decide to write Kathleen a letter letting her know that, the whole town knows it, sis, and then the whole town sees it, but your husband has been cheating on you. I don't know how you don't see it. We don't want you out here in these streets looking dumb. So I just want to let you know your husband is like making a fool of you out here in these streets. So as soon as she gets that letter and she finds out about Stacy, she immediately files for a divorce. So the divorce takes a while. They never really solidified, all these different arrangements, the financials and all of that stuff. But for some reason, out of the kindness of Kathleen's heart, she decided that she was just going to go ahead and finalize the divorce without finalizing the financials, just so that her soon-to-be ex-husband can marry his mistress sooner. Nah, sis, not happening over here. First of all, y'all, they moved into Kathleen's neighborhood. He said, of course, it was because he wanted to be close to his kids. Okay, fine, whatever you say. But little old Stacy, who's young and dumb and don't know any better. She's 16. What do you expect? She, rollerblading, skating on down the street on Kathleen's block and her little Daisy Dukes trying to, provoke Kathleen. It's like you're making a mockery out of her in her own neighborhood. Like, everybody knows that you're the mistress. You're the reason for the divorce. So it's just childish. And then on top of that, while they were going through like the custody, figuring out custody and all of that with the two sons, they tried to play Kathleen. They not tried, they did play Kathleen. So what they did was, there was one day where Drew was supposed to be dropping the kids off back to Kathleen. And he decides that he is going to use his power to manipulate the situation. So he calls Kathleen and tells her, I'm about to drop the kids off. Come outside, get the kids, whatever. So she comes out to meet him to get the kids. And as soon as she comes out to meet him for her children, I'm just going to clean up my brows really quick. His girlfriend, Stacy, is out there with a camcorder all up in Kathleen's face, and Kathleen was not having it. First of all, it was her camcorder. You're not going to be in my face with my property, sis. Not happening. So she didn't attack her, didn't do anything wrong. She kind of just motioned for Stacy to put the camera down. And as soon as she moved anywhere near Stacy whatsoever, you just hear Stacy saying, "She hit me, you hit me, you hit me." And as soon as that happens, Drew Peterson whips out his cuffs, puts Kathleen in a headlock, brings her to the curb, and arrests her for battery. A, abuse of power. B, you trying to finagle her and, try to build a case against her for custody of your kids. Like, how trash are you? You're just a trash human being. And then trash for using this little 16-year-old girl who don't know no damn better to be a pawn in this whole situation. Like, a divorce is grown folks' business. Okay? Your little girlfriend has no place in grown folks' business. So even after all of this, Kathleen is still nice enough to just be like, I just want to be done with you. Let's just get this divorce done. We'll worry about money and all that stuff later. So that is what they do. So at age 16, they start dating. He's 46. And then they date for 2 years just to waste time to make sure that she's just legal enough. And after 2 years, when the divorce is finalized, 8 days later, Drew marries Stacy. So now that I have given you some background on Stacy and Drew, let's hop into this story, y'all. I'm going to be using my Fenty Eaze drop. October 29th, 2007, Stacy's sister, Cassandra, she walks into the police department and she asks to file a missing persons report. She tells them that her sister Stacy is missing, and Stacy is a 23-year-old mother of technically 4, 2 of her own. And she talked to her on Saturday, and she has not heard from her since. Now, by this time, this is really late Sunday going into Monday morning. So you know that they have a very special relationship if she's like, look, it's been a day and I have been calling my sister and she has not responded to me. She has not responded to my text messages, none of that. So you know there has to be a very special relationship between the two. Now, as she is reporting this to the police officers, they immediately realize who the hell she's talking about. And they recognize the name Drew Peterson, who is her sister's husband. Cassandra also mentions to the police that she stopped by her sister's house and her son, Chris, answered the door. And she asks, hey, what's up? What's going on? And Chris mentioned that his mom and dad had gotten into a fight, being Stacy and Drew, and mom left and dad went out to look for her. That is what her son told Cassandra. So after she hears this from her nephew, she calls Drew directly to find out what's going on. And as soon as he answers the phone, he starts to rant and go on about, oh, she left me. He's like, and Cassandra's like, what do you mean she left you? What are you talking about? So when he says that, he starts to say, oh, she grabbed her bikini and the deed to the house and $25,000, and then she left me with another man. What? Like, who, first of all, what woman is leaving her husband without grabbing A, her children, and B, all her things? Okay? I'm not leaving my husband for any reason if I don't have my kids with me and I don't have everything that I need to get my own life together once I'm gone. Like, I'm not leaving with just a bikini. Like, what? Like, it made no sense. So she gives all that information to the police. Then Cassandra and her friend Bruce go back to Stacy's house, and they see both Stacy and Drew's car now in the driveway. Now, when Cassandra was there before, there was no cars in the driveway. So now both cars are there. So when they pull up, of course, Cassandra and her friend are sitting in the car like, what is going on? So they sit there and Cassandra's like, well, what should I do? And Bruce is like, call him, sis, and let me talk to him. So he gets on the phone with Bruce. Drew answers, and now Drew is saying, oh, she left me, kind of the same story. She left me, she took the money, the deed, and she left me for another guy, and I had to go pick up her car from the airport. She left it at the airport, and I had to go pick it up. Like, what? Like, none of his story makes any sense whatsoever. Cassandra and Bruce, being the concerned friends and family that they are, they're like, okay, we about to pull up to this airport. Let's see what's going on, see if we can see anything at this airport. When they go to the airport, they can see that there's a camera there. So they're like, okay, let's let the police know. He said that this is where she was. This is where she left the car. So she had to have gotten on a plane. She had to have done something at this airport, and she should be on camera. So she goes to the police, Cassandra, and she says, well, he said that she left and her car was at this airport. So there has to be something there. And they're like, sis, girl, everybody knows that airport don't have a working camera, right? That camera don't work, girl. Everybody knows that. Yeah, everybody knows that, including Drew Peterson, who was a part of that police force. So after this takes place, the police say, okay, yeah, we better look into Drew and see what's going on with him and Stacy. So the police go to actually talk to Drew at his house, and they ask, what's going on? He gives them the same story, saying, she left me with a new man. She took this, and this, and just left. And the police say, okay, well, can we, search the property? Can we search your vehicles? And he's like, yeah, you can search my car. You can search my property. You can search my house, but don't disturb anything. Don't really touch anything. Just look. And you can search my car, but you cannot touch Stacy's car. Now, why is that? Oh, you don't know? Because I don't know either. It makes no sense. No sense whatsoever, other than he's trying to cover up something that could possibly be in that car. After the media gets wind of this pretty, young white girl that's missing, and she's a mom, and she's married to a police sergeant, they start to, of course, want to talk to Drew. And, of course, Drew is just eating it all up, honey. He is all for the media being in his business. As much as he pretended that he did not want them to be there asking him questions, he was so excited to be somebody that they cared about. And he basically tells them, the same story. She ran away, and he goes on to say, like, what am I going to be sad and cry about it for? I'm not going to cry about it. She ran away from me. Really? If there were no problems with your wife and mother of your children, you should be sad. I don't care what reason it was that she left you or she's missing. You should be upset about that. You should feel something. Something else really quick I want to point out to y'all. As I was doing my research, I told y'all how they said, Bolingbrook is a sleepy town. It's a quiet place. That whole area is a very quiet place. But when they did the searches for Stacy Peterson dredging water, all that kind of stuff, they found several sets of skeletal remains. Several sets. None of them were Stacy's, but they found several sets of skeleton remains. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that that's a safe place to be? It tells me to stay away. Now, as the police continue their investigation, they're also checking to see if there's any truth to the story about Stacy having any type of boyfriend or anything like that. So they get phone records and they see that maybe there is a little bit to the story of her having a boyfriend on the side or cheating on Drew. What they find is someone named Scott in her phone. And, seems like there's some steaminess going on in the phone with Scott. So they bring him in. They want to have a conversation with him. So when they talk to Scott, his name is Scott Rosetto. So when they talked to Scott, they found out, yes, she was a friend of his and she actually knew him from high school. They went to high school together. And he said, I hadn't talked to her in about 6 years. And then randomly she called him and, he left her on red, sent her straight to voicemail the first time she tried to call him. And then she called him again the next day. She was persistent. And when she called him the next day, he finally answered and they started talking and all that kind of stuff. And they were just platonic friends. It was nothing romantic about it. He had no interest in being romantic with her. He just wasn't interested, but he was fine with being like a friend. He also told police there was one time when they just went out to eat as friends, as always, just went to go grab a bite to eat because men and women can be friends. It's a thing. And that day when they went out to eat, they see a police squad car circling the parking lot. And he notices like, okay, this is strange. Why is there a squad car circling the parking lot? So then Drew walks in and Drew comes and just invites himself to the table, sits down. And, I'm not mad at that. That I would pull up on my husband if that's what I saw too. And I didn't know who this person was. Y'all friends, but I don't know nothing about you. I'm pulling up. But Drew then starts to abuse his power once again. So Drew walks up, full police uniform, all that good stuff. Cool. So he walks up and sits down and said, I don't want you guys ever talking again. I don't want you to ever see her again, ever contact her again. And then proceeds to ask him for his identification. For what? Why do you need his ID? Just trying to intimidate him. And, after that point, I guess it worked because homeboy was like, I'm good. I don't need to be friends with you. This doesn't seem like a good situation to be friends with someone. So I'm good. He says, we did not have a sexual relationship. It was nothing like that. Yes, there was some sexting. We're both flirts. It never went any further than that. There would be times where she would try to come over and want to come, take it further, but I will always say, no, I have to do something. I'm busy. I'm not home, like that kind of thing. I would always brush her off. And that was true. There was no sexual relationship with them whatsoever. Now, Drew also tells police that the day after she went missing, she called him to tell him, I'm leaving you for good. I'm going with this Scott guy. That's who supposedly her boyfriend was supposed to be, was Scott. Even though police have already been talking to Scott and they know that he is not involved with her in that way. So what he says is that, yes, she called from her cell phone saying that she was leaving me. So police, of course, go to get those phone records to see if a call was actually placed from her cell phone to Drew's phone at the time that he said it happened. It did, but there's always a but. This is where Drew's stepbrother comes in. Drew has a stepbrother by the name of Thomas Morphy, and Tom has been in the hospital because he's tried to commit suicide. Tom is in the hospital and talking to the FBI. So the FBI reached out to state police and let them know, hey, we have somebody that's in the hospital right now who's sick, that has some information that may be important to the Stacy Peterson, Drew Peterson case. They finally go and they get to talk to Tom. So why is he in the hospital, you say? We'll get to that. So when police talk to Tom, they find out that one day, good old Drew called his brother and said he needed help with something. So he, of course, he didn't know what his brother needed help with, but he's gonna help his brother. He agrees to help his brother, and Drew comes and picks him up. Now, on the way to pick him up, after he picks him up, should I say, they stop at a Starbucks and Drew gets a coffee for his brother. It's a vanilla flavored coffee. They get the coffee and they are then on their way to do whatever it is that he needed help with. So what actually happens is Drew drops his brother off at a park, y'all. Gives him a cell phone, and it ends up being Drew's cell phone. Gives him his cell phone and says, I'll be right back. Awkward, right? So Drew leaves, and then a few minutes later, the phone rings. And when the phone rings, it says Stacy Peterson. Now, mind you, the origin of this call, so the call that Drew made from Stacy's phone to his brother who was standing in a random park with Drew's phone, her phone, he drove to where Scott Rosetta lived. So whole setup, whole frame up, he, wanted to make it look like, yes, she was with Scott when she made that phone call to my phone and I was not near either of them. He dumb, but he ain't that dumb. After this happens, Drew drives his brother with him back to Drew's house. And Drew has a big blue drum in his bedroom that he needs help getting out of the house. Now, Tom has no clue what's in the drum, and he don't really want to ask no questions. He telling the police whole time, like, I thought we were about to go handle bruh that was messing around with his wife. And it ends up being that what Tom thinks is that he was helping to carry out the dead body of Stacy Peterson in this blue drum. So now let's circle back to why Tom was in the hospital. Tom was in the hospital because he felt so bad about what he thought he had taken part of with the disappearance of his sister-in-law, Stacy, that he tried to take his own life. Now, after, Tom talks to the police, after he's tried to harm himself, of course, you have Drew all in the media talking about, I don't want to badmouth my brother, but bad-mouthing his brother, saying, he has mental problems, he has, suicidal tendencies, and just really trying to use the fact that his brother felt so guilty about what happened that he tried to, commit suicide. While Drew is denying all of this, of course, the police continue to do their work. And the police are, researching, and they're like, oh, he said he went to Starbucks. There's only one Starbucks in this area. Let's go pull up and see if they have some video footage. So they go, and wouldn't you know it, that there was only one vanilla flavored coffee that was ordered that entire day. And they pull it right up on camera, and it's Drew Peterson driving a truck, handing that coffee over to somebody, which is Tom Morphy. And then as he tries to deny the blue barrel and all of that stuff, her own sister, Stacy's own sister, confirmed that she remembers being in the garage just days before she went missing. She was in the garage with her sister, Stacy, and she's like, why is there a big blue barrel in y'all's garage? So now basically with all this stuff building up, all this evidence building up, police basically just feel like Drew, figured out that she was talking to some other man, being Scott. He found the text messages in her phone, and then he killed her after finding the text message, and then tried to frame Scott for either she's with him or he did something to her. I have nothing to do with it kind of thing. So the police continue to search and search and search and search, but they just never find Stacy Peterson, any traces of her or her body, skeletal remains, any of that. Now, y'all know the story does not end there, okay? Now, let's just go back for a moment to Drew's third wife, Kathleen. So, they get divorced, all of that good stuff. And then just a few years later, Kathleen dies. So what happened supposedly is the day that she was found dead, Drew had taken the kids to the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. So when he went to, bring the kids back home, he tried to call her, he tried to text her, and she didn't answer. So he reached out to the neighbors who were also best friends with Kathleen and asked if they'd heard from her, seen her, and they also said, no, we haven't seen her, we haven't heard from her at all. So he decides that he's going to drive to the house. And he knocks on the door, it doesn't answer. And so he decides he's going to call a locksmith, because I'm assuming the property that he was living in was probably the one that they shared together. So it was probably in his name. So he probably still felt like he owned that home to be able to just walk into it, although he did not live there. But he calls the locksmith, and the locksmith actually comes, unlocks the door, and he tells the neighbors, well, I probably shouldn't go in there because we're not on the best of terms. So why don't you go in and see if Kathleen's in there, and then let me know. Come back out and let me know. Now, you was cool enough to call a locksmith to open this woman's door, but y'all ain't cool enough for you to come in and see if she's okay. Make it make sense. We all know that was just a setup for someone else to find Kathleen in the house. So, of course, the neighbors, Mary and her husband, they go in and they search the house. They're looking for Kathleen. And they go into the bathroom. And in her bathroom, she has like a little garden tub. And for those of you who don't know what a garden tub is, it's like a little circular bathtub that is not, there's not very much space in it. I hate those things, but it's just a little circular bathtub. And of course they walk in and she's curled up, face down in the bathtub with no water in it, in the bathtub, and she's dead. Police originally gave him so much grace in this case because he was a police officer, and they didn't really do a thorough investigation. Someone that was there on the crime scene said, oh, this looks like it was an accidental drowning. So that's what the detective went with at the time, knowing that this was the ex-wife of a police officer. They just kind of said, oh, this was an accidental drowning, didn't do any investigation, didn't rope off the scene, didn't do any of that stuff, and just kind of moved on. Now, talking about their relationship, first of all, like I said earlier, he started cheating on his second wife with Kathleen. Now, they met on a blind date. Now, how do you have a blind date when you're married? What are you doing? So they dated for 3 months and they were married right after that. And then they had 2 kids. After they got married and had the kids, according to Kathleen, he started to be mentally and physically abusive to her. Now, this is even before he started to cheat on her with Stacy or anybody else. So I feel like had police actually known all of this right when this happened, or cared to investigate that, then it wouldn't have been such an open and shut case the way that it was initially. But it does not stay that way, luckily. Because when Stacy Peterson goes missing, it kind of reignites the curiosity of the detectives. Like, well, maybe, you know, if he could do this to his fourth wife, his third wife also died, and it didn't seem quite right. So maybe we should take another look at that. So they actually exhume Kathleen's body. And when they exhume her body, they find that she actually has a number of bruises on her body. And these bruises and these injuries are not what you would expect to see when someone dies from an accidental drowning. So the medical examiner changes the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning due to homicidal means, meaning murder. This was murder. So on May 7th of 2009, Drew Peterson was arrested for the murder of his third wife, Kathleen Savio. Now, her best friend, Mary, who also found her, did mention that she found the scene strange when she walked in. She said, you know, if she was taking a bath, she should have had like a bath towel, a bath robe, a bath mat to put her feet on when she got out, something. And it just didn't look like someone was getting ready to take a bath. And it was also mentioned by Drew and Stacy's priest or pastor during trial that Stacy actually confided in him that the night that Kathleen went missing, Stacy had woken up in the middle of the night and Drew wasn't there. And she had called him and texted him and he never responded. So he showed up a few hours later and he was dressed in all black, which was strange. And then he had a duffel bag with him and he went straight into the laundry room and he took that duffel bag and emptied it straight into the washing machine. And then he just walked out. And of course, you know, Stacy being a woman trying to see what the hell is going on, Stacy opens up the washer and she sees a bunch of women's clothes in it and it's not her clothes. So she's very confused and doesn't know what is going on. So she also admits that the next day, Drew spent all day pretty much coaching her. He said, you know, the police are going to want to talk to you and this is what you need to say. So he spent hours coaching her on what she should say to the police about the disappearance of Kathleen. So basically, she lied when she talked to the police officer. And also Drew was sitting there while she was talking to the police officer, finishing her sentences, etc., etc. Everything that's not supposed to be happening when you're talking to somebody who could be a potential witness or have some information that you need. Having their spouse, who is also the ex-spouse of the person that's missing or the person that's dead, sitting there with you while you're interviewing. They also had the divorce attorney for Stacy. Yes, him and Stacy were gonna get a divorce. And they had the divorce attorney on the stand and the defense asked what she said that was of value to the attorney. And he mentioned that Stacy came to him and said, will I get more money if I go to the police and tell them how Drew killed Kathleen? So the divorce attorney said that on the stand. He was actually a defendant, like the defense's witness. And the defense was like, so just to clarify, are you saying that she said, you know, how much money can I get if I go to the police and tell them that he killed Kathleen? And he said, no. She said, how much money can I get if I tell them how he killed Kathleen? And they asked him 3 or 4 times and he kept saying like, look, bruh, I'm telling you what she said. She didn't ask if she went and said that he did it. She said, will I get more money if I tell them how he killed Kathleen? It was not looking good for the defense. So needless to say, Drew Peterson was convicted for the murder of Kathleen Savio. And he was sentenced to 38 years. So in August of 2014, he makes friends with this inmate in prison. He's like a gang affiliated inmate, and he, you know, tries to recruit him to murder the state's attorney, James Glasgow. And he actually writes in writing the whole plan, 19 pages, to this inmate. The inmate writes a letter to the attorney's office, and they then talk to him, and he tells them everything. He wants you murdered, and he's written me all these pages. I have it in writing. This is what he wants to do in these kites. And basically, they have him wear a wire in prison, and you can literally listen to dummy Drew Peterson telling this man, yes, it's 100% a go. Let's get this done. He needs to be murdered. I told him he better watch his back. You better remember what you did to me, etc., etc. This dummy. And the inmate didn't get a deal for his cooperation or his information. He didn't get anything special for what he was in prison for. He did it just because Drew was dumb. So needless to say, on February 19th of 2015, he was also convicted of murder for hire to murder James Glasgow, the state's attorney. So for this conviction, he got an additional 40 years, which is more than what he got for murdering his wife, but neither here nor there. We won't go there. It's Chicago. It's Illinois. Say no more. He got 40 years on top of the sentence that he got for the murder of Kathleen Savio. So your boy is never getting out. He unfortunately was able to technically have his family keep custody of Stacy's children, which I don't even know how that's possible. But again, we're in Illinois. What else do you expect? He has his oldest son, who's an adult, has custody of Stacy's children. And Stacy's sister, Cassandra, till this day has not been able to see her own blood relatives. Just no part of their life whatsoever, because Drew has denied her access. Okay, guys, so this is the final look. I told you that I was going to try to keep it simple, neutral today, but still cute. And also enjoying my glass of wine. And I really enjoyed this today. This is one of my favorite stories to talk about because it's so close to home, and it's just so crazy, like just bananas. So I was really excited to share this one with you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this story as much as I did this week. And if there's any other stories that you want me to cover, make sure you comment down below and let me know what you want to hear about. Also, let me know your thoughts on this story. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story, your take on this story. Where is Stacy Peterson? That's what I want to know. So other than that, y'all, be on the lookout for new videos coming soon. So if you have not already, make sure you subscribe. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell when you subscribe so that you get notified when I post new content. Hello. And then finally, just make sure you like the video. It just lets me know that you guys enjoy what I'm putting out to the world. And if you don't like the video, let me know. Hop in them comments. Tell me what you want to see. Tell me what you want to hear. I am all ears, y'all. Otherwise, y'all, it's been fun. It's been real. And until next time, love you guys. Bye.